Regarding Synnibear03 and the controversy that she was involved in well over a year ago, I think it's safe to say that everything that needed to be said has already been said regarding her responses. Not just her most recent one as of 2026, but also her responses back in 2024. Despite that, I feel compelled to talk about those responses from back in the day as well. I guess this is what you call a retrospective. Now, I have very little to actually say about her very first apology video when she first was being exposed over grooming Eno. She herself describes it as merely being a reaction to being exposed, and it was also heavily scripted by her roommate Birdie, so I can't really in good faith call it a genuine apology. Especially because not too long after it was uploaded, she would take the video down, uploading a rebuttal in its place. No, I want to focus instead on her response, particularly part 1 of the response that was, I guess, never actually completed, since I imagine we're not getting a part 2 to it ever. Let's begin.
Nothing in the past week has made sense. I was completely convinced that I was a predator and a groomer and that I needed intervention. I'm realizing I might not even have a clear understanding of what grooming is. I believed I groomed a child because Jack told me I did, and I believed him because I trusted him. But Jack doesn't know what he's talking about.
So already this begs 2 questions. First off, what information was Birdie using to assess the idea that its roommate was a groomer? And second, what information is Synnibear assessing here, which confirms in her mind that she is innocent of that crime? Regardless of the answer to either, it's a very dodgy look to be so dismissive so quickly in the video as to why someone could perceive what they believe to be indecent behavior. And what's really funny also was that Synnibear herself has made a point to explicitly say she does not want to be provocative with the video that she's making.
Don't make something that will make people upset. People are upset,
yeah,
but
no,
like...
this video in particular, I don't want to be provocative like at all. I just want to make sure everyone understands what I'm saying.
I swear, one of these days, I have to do a retrospective on Just a Robot Synnibear video. He's rightfully ashamed of it, but my god, it might be my favorite video, ironically.
I made my confession under duress. I fully believed I was a groomer because Jack told me I was one, but I don't believe that anymore. I am not a groomer. I did not groom Eno.
While I completely believe that yes, Synnibear did make that video under duress, I feel like acting as if that explanation is the end-all be-all is quite frankly dishonest. As in, I genuinely do not believe that one would actually be apologizing for something unless they genuinely thought that what they were doing was wrong. Throughout this video, you're going to see Synnibear repeatedly try to perform these mental gymnastics in trying to explain how she isn't a groomer, completely neglecting the fact that it doesn't matter what you want to call it, she was talking about porn and sex with a freaking minor, essentially focusing so hard on individual trees that she completely misses the forest around her.
It honestly feels like everyone has their own definition of what grooming is, which is so fucking dangerous. But smart people define child grooming as the act of deliberately establishing a relationship with a child to prepare them for abuse. As an action in and of itself, grooming does not have criminal penalties, but facilitation of a criminal sexual act is considered a crime.
Smart people? Really, Synny? I don't think insulting the people who are showing genuine concern for a minor is a good look on anyone. Also, this has already been said countless times by other people, but I don't think that something has to fit exactly the definition of grooming to be considered abusive. Especially when the word grooming itself, while generally taken as a negative thing to do, is if anything more so neutral. I've been groomed into being a public speaker, you don't hear me whining about it. Nonetheless, when people try calling out grooming over the internet, it's because they're trying to call out abusive behavior. And having indecent interactions with a minor over sexual topics, I would decidedly call abusive behavior.
Many of you likely saw my video where I stated I groomed a minor, and I saw quite a few people point out that it's very strange. The main reason I saw was, people don't usually confess to things like this, they try to fight back against these things.
Unfortunately for you, Synnibear, this is real life, and real life, unlike fiction, doesn't have to make sense. Yes, it is unusual for someone to immediately confess their guilt if they're caught on something, but something can be unusual and still be true. Impossibilities, on the other hand, that's a different story.
But none of you questioned if what I was saying actually made sense.
Why would they question if what you were saying made sense? Birdie broke the story, you confessed your guilt, no reasonable person would look any deeper than that. And in case anyone forgot, There are thousands if not millions of other people on YouTube trying to get your attention. Viewers would be within their right to not pay you a second thought after that. The burden is on you to clear any misconceptions, not anyone else.
I was coaxed and guilted into a false confession by someone I loved and took care of. Someone I worked my ass off to provide a moderately comfortable lifestyle, not only for them, but for the 2 cats they begged me to adopt. One of which he fucking stole from my apartment.
Obviously, I'm looking at this with the gift of hindsight, but calling out Birdie for being a bully, while entirely valid, is not going to work here. The internet is firmly on its side and entirely against you, and most importantly, your reputation is currently in the toilet. And knowing just how rabid the art commentary community can be, you're completely helpless to fight back. Birdie would have to do something exceptionally dumb to give you that opportunity, which, fortunately for you, it did, considering it stole one of Synny's cats. But ideally, that should be kept separate from the video surrounding Enno, since keep in mind, that's what people are clicking the video for.
My conversations with Enno, while inappropriate and irresponsible, trust me, you will never fucking catch me trying to act like this was an okay thing to do. I wasn't flirting with Enno. My messages have been misinterpreted in the most bad faith and malicious manner possible.
Some people will say that her interactions with Enno were irresponsible and inappropriate and call it downplaying, but I disagree. Other creators like Omegon called it inappropriate and were largely fine for it, while Just the Robot called it inappropriate and irresponsible, and it was considered downplaying. No, the problem comes from the fact that Synnibear is actively trying to minimize what sounds like the damage would have been inflicted to Enno from how she was being talked to, and that will become especially apparent as this response continues.
Now that I'm having to sit alone with my thoughts for the first time in a really long time, I've been able to reflect on everything. And I've realized that I was very misled by Birdie on many things regarding psychology and psychology-related subjects. I looked to Birdie for any and all information on these subjects because it was their, quote, special interest, and I figured he'd at least know more than the average dumbass. But I've started to realize that the answers he gave me on mental health subjects depended almost entirely on what was most convenient for Birdie.
We live in the age of the internet where you could use your phones to look up anything you want. Why would one of your earliest resorts be to Birdie, someone who will determine what is grooming depending on what is most convenient for it to avoid accountability? You put way too much faith in this overglorified meat sack, you freaking donut.
Here are some actual qualifiers for what constitutes as grooming, as is listed by a simple Google search. Isolation of the child, building the child's trust, inappropriate communication, which includes asking for secrets to be kept, and using sexual language that the child may not understand, and educating the child on the subject, buying gifts, giving the child special attention, singling out the child to make them feel more mature, special, or different from other children, showing particular interest in the child, victim selection, and substance misuse.
Again, I'm far from the only person to point this out, but the definitions of grooming that Synnibear uses could very well just apply to in real life grooming, and may not necessarily be adapted for the internet. She's being pedantic, and she's doing a bad job at it to boot. First off, according to that list, grooming could take a number of different forms, which means there's no one-size-fits-all example of grooming someone. And secondly, you wouldn't have to tick every single one of those boxes to have a case of grooming on your hands. All it takes is at least one for there to be a presentable argument. But don't take my word for it, take Synny's.
I did not isolate Enno. Enno was actually already isolated when they first met me. Enno has told me directly that they only ever speak to like 3 people, that being Sophia the Neko, me, and another person I don't know. I never got jealous if they hung out with other people instead of me. I never told them who they could and could not hang out with. I didn't want to control who they were hanging out with. I wouldn't get upset if they didn't talk to me. The only thing I can think of that probably looked like I did is if I said something in their DMs and they took forever to respond, I would get anxious and think that I upset them somehow. I do that to everyone though. I'm just really anxious. I don't like the idea of bothering people.
Enno was already isolated when she first met me. So you saw this minor who was in a vulnerable state and you basically took advantage of it. That's not the comeback that you think it is. If anything, doesn't being a predator mean that you're going to seek after vulnerable people because they're easier to manipulate? Dude, that's horrible.
Building the child's trust. I don't think I was ever even interested in building their trust. The only thing I was ever really concerned about was making them upset or uncomfortable. In fact, it already kinda seemed like they just automatically trusted me with a lot. I didn't really have to do anything on that front. Even then, it was just never on the forefront of my mind.
This could definitely be used to argue that Synnibear is grossly irresponsible and just does not have a filter, but it goes deeper than that. While I would go as far to argue that Eno really needs better training as far as how to conduct themselves over the internet, since being too chummy around strangers can present a serious safety risk, Synnibear is still an adult, and adults are the ones typically tasked with the responsibility to be careful around minors, and that can largely be owed to the fact that minors are extremely naive and impressionable. Admittedly, the damage would not be as severe if the minor was 17 or even 16 years old, but Eno was only 14, which is doubly dangerous because it also means she likely just started puberty. So hormones are going to be running wild. So no matter how you slice it, it is still entirely unacceptable on her part for this to be able to happen.
Inappropriate communication. The examples given are asking for secrets to be kept, using sexual language the child may not understand, and educating the child on the subject. I will not deny that my conversations were inappropriate and I shouldn't have been having them, to begin with. The only instance of me asking them to keep something a secret would be me saying to them, please don't tell the public I'm depraved. The secret's kinda just out now, I don't care anymore. I never intended to keep our relationship a secret. That was never even something I was intending to hide. It was also never my intention to educate Eno on any particular, sex shit. I don't know. Now that I think about it, majority of the inappropriate conversations we had revolved around sadomasochism and, sadistic fantasies, not really sex. Sex was definitely brought up, but it was never my intention to educate Eno about it.
Let me get this straight. Kinks that you derive sexual gratification from, in your mind, are not sexual topics. Are you cracked? What would that be if not sexual in nature? And on that note, what business do you have telling that to a freaking 14-year-old? You thought about it, you voiced it, you put it in the video, and you uploaded it for everyone around the freaking world to hear. How anyone could hear this and come to the conclusion that you're somehow not a freaking pedophile is beyond me.
Buying gifts or giving gifts. Didn't do that. Eno actually made a shit ton of gifts for me, but I don't think I've ever made anything in return, which saying out loud makes me feel kinda shitty. But no, I never made any gifts for Eno.
The funny thing is that Synnibear genuinely thought here that the only bad thing people could think of her was that she never really thought about what Eno would want. When the reality is, it also exposes parasociality within Eno, her victim. They clearly held a lot of respect and admiration for you. So this could be a very clear sign that they're getting very personally attached, and you probably should be careful regarding their feelings. Or failing that, smelling that there is indeed smoke in the area, and you're probably gonna get burned if you don't put out the fire.
Now, I did ask them to make things for me a lot. The most inappropriate thing I think I've asked was for, a comic. I'm not gonna pretend I'm justified for doing that. No, I think it was inappropriate. Fucking weird and cringy. But everything else I can think of was mostly just ship art.
Oh god, comics. I can't hear that word and not think about the rape comic that was sent in Eno's DMs.
Giving the child special attention. Examples given are singling out the child to make them feel more mature, special, or different from other children. The fact that I was talking to Eno at all could be seen as me giving them special attention. But not once did I ever tell them that I thought they were more mature, special, or different. The only example I can think of is toward the beginning of our conversations when I told them they were funny. But I wasn't trying to make them feel like they were different from other kids.
7 words. Why are all the funny people children? Even if you didn't count that as making Eno feel special about who they were, it's impossible to argue that Eno was not at least more attractive to Synnibear because they were underaged. This is what I mean when I say that Synnibear was being pedantic here. You're making these largely meaningless distinctions that ultimately don't really change the fact that you're guilty of grooming a freaking minor. And you're trying to downplay it to make yourself look less guilty than you actually are. Even when the facts still stand that you had indecent interactions with a minor over sexual topics. Even if you did not intend for anything to come about from this. Intentions don't always have to match the results. To illustrate, if you're a drunk driver and you didn't mean to hit someone with your car, you still hit someone with your freaking car. And any person worth their salt would call you a murderer. You can't downplay something that egregious. Not unless you don't mind looking like a pedophile apologist.
Showing particular interest in the child. I wasn't particularly interested in Eno. In fact, I had 2 other friends who I was talking to like this, and they knew that. Cough, Kenny, cough, brother, bitch ass. Victim selection. I did not select them. In fact, they talked to me first.
Wait, huh? 11? What kind of 11-year-old goes around drawing porn? Oh god, my head hurts. But that's besides the point. What does it matter that the minor reached out to you first? That's not an excuse for you to have these conversations with them. Heck, you knowing their age ahead of time and that they were this young should have been a very clear red flag to immediately pump the brakes on having any conversations with them. What a garbage defense.
Substance misuse. Didn't do that. Now there's some other things that we really need to discuss when we're talking about this whole grooming situation.
Not so fast. I find it very funny how you're gonna bring up this list, and yet completely gloss over the most damning argument that could be made against you. Now admittedly, gaining the trust of Eno's caregivers or parents would be rather difficult. After all, this is happening over the internet, not in real life. However, for Synnibear's situation, that would not be necessary, because Synni does not have to go through Eno's parents to get to Eno. On the flip side, one of the points made on that list was testing the waters / boundary violation. Which, if you look at the full logs between Eno and Synni, that absolutely happened there. Synni has actually been depicted in those chat logs actively teasing Eno over her age, knowing full on well that Eno has absolutely no business discussing the material that they are. But as their conversations continued, the severity of the material got ramped up more and more, up to and including the climax with the rape comic. Eno was even shown emulating Synni's mannerisms, which was something that actively developed as their conversations continued. You can quite literally see Eno being groomed in real time. This ornery looking donut up and tried to strawman the argument that she could be a groomer and thought we wouldn't notice. Which says to me, and should say to you all, that she is incapable of arguing this point in good faith. Sorry, not sorry, Synni, I just have no patience for liars. But by all means, continue making your point.
So firstly, I am a hetero woman. I am attracted to men, as you can see from these fucking cringy-ass conversations that I had with Eno. I did not want to date Eno. I never considered that as an option.
This is as good a time as ever to address something that I said in my previous video, talking about Synnibear's 2026 apology. In response to Synnibear saying that she was unattracted to Eno, I pointed out that both she and Eno were born female, and that was to specifically address the fact that Synnibear herself has actively tried to hide behind her being straight as a defense. Additionally, I pointed out that she was in a lesbian relationship for a period of time between 1 and 2 years.
Have you ever dated a woman?
When I was 14.
Of course you did.
And I ended up breaking up with my girlfriend when I was 16 because I realized I didn't love her like that, because I realized I don't like women like that.
You were just a bit bi-curious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Once I kissed an Italian guy, but that's not important right now.
And it has been brought up that Synnibear potentially being attracted to the same sex as her own should not be ascribed to potentially pointing out that she could be attracted to Eno because she is a girl. Because Synnibear clearly has a paraphilia that makes her attracted to children specifically. Now, I agree with that. After all, even if it's unusual for an adult to groom a child of the same sex that they are, that doesn't make it impossible. However, I would not be making that point if Synnibear did not try to make that point first. Because here's the rub. People at first did not ever really think that Synnibear was attracted to Eno. Heck, I don't think that Synni is attracted to Eno. But it doesn't matter whether or not she is. Because no matter where you stand on that subject, there is plenty of evidence to otherwise call her a pedophile in spite of that. And that evidence is all that anyone else is really focusing on.
I did not reach out to Eno, and it took Eno 3 months of persistently pestering, prying, and giving me gifts before I finally gave in and spoke to them. From the start, I remained very reserved and kept Eno beyond arm's length. I wasn't super interested in talking to them until they sent me an image of me laying in bed, and I made a joke about it being inaccurate because Boy wasn't there. Once Eno started indulging in my very strong autistic infatuation with Boy, that's when I started talking a lot more. And as we kept talking, I felt a lot more comfortable sharing certain things about the character that I liked, including personal fantasies.
I don't need to explain why this is victim blaming, right? Failing that, this narrative of how the minor managed to wear down your defenses and you ended up giving in to your impulses is laughable. I'll admit personally to having a problem with ignoring other people, as in I'm really bad at it, but fortunately this is the freaking internet. Just use the block button.
In hindsight, I really should have filtered myself when talking to this person. Definitely should have practiced some restraint. I'm not proud of this, but it was never my intention to desensitize them or harm Enno. That was never on my mind. I imagine that's fairly obvious if the DMs are actually read with more than one brain cell activated.
As I've already stated earlier, your intentions are completely irrelevant when your actions have a very adverse effect on your victim.
I've been speaking to some individuals who are very critical of me, but they've been fair. They disagreed with the idea that this was grooming because one of them, who goes by Kumo, thought something was off about the evidence that was used to back up the claim. Kumo has been very critical of child predators and people who enact performative vigilante justice online for validation or personal gain.
I always found Kumo so fascinating to look into. From what I understand, he has schizophrenia, and according to Just the Robot, he's often seen as a troll and a contrarian, so probably not the most reliable person to listen to regarding whether someone is a pedophile or not.
It was explained to me that my understanding of grooming was clearly warped, and these conversations just sounded like, I'm quoting Kumo, locker room girl talk.
In what universe would talking to a minor about your fantasies of rape be construable as locker room girl talk? That doesn't make any freaking sense. Heck, for that matter, I don't think I've ever actually heard of an adult and a minor sharing a locker room together. Considering that Enno, yeah, sure, they would be in high school, but Cindy's freaking 20 at the time of this video being released. I cannot begin to fathom the idea of a 20-year-old woman and a 14-year-old being in the same locker room. That is inconceivable. For that matter, isn't Kumo a man? What realistically would he know about what goes on in the locker rooms for the sex opposite of his own? And this isn't even getting into the fact that if Synnibear wanted to have these conversations with anyone, why choose a 14-year-old and not someone— oh wait, right, because all the funny people are children.
I myself have never been very social. I would even call myself socially inept. I'm a bit of a retard, so I never considered that there was an existing dynamic that sounded similar to my conversations. This was two girls talking about Jeremiah down the block and how hot he is.
Yeah, you know, that would probably be a lot more justifiable if Enno and Cindy were around the same age. I still find it disgusting, but hey, teenage boys act gross around each other all the time anyway, so why not have that be true for girls too?
Once again, I feel the need to make this painfully clear that I am not excusing how I talk to Enno.
Bullshit. In actively trying to downplay what you are doing with Enno, you are in fact trying to excuse it. A fact that to this day, she has yet to internalize. Little miss, when I was a child, I developed a porn addiction.
It was inappropriate, it was irresponsible, it was negligent, and I shouldn't have done it. I regret it a lot. I should have made the responsible choice and stopped these conversations before they even happened. But I know for a fact that this was not grooming.
We're just going to completely dismiss the idea that maybe the way grooming is exhibited by women is just different from men. I'd go on about this point, but if I spurk on this for too long, I'm going to say something I'm going to regret.
None of the previous qualifiers can be found in my DMs with Enno, because I did not groom Enno.
They can be found, they have been found, and quite frankly, I think you're completely lost. Even if you did not want to call this grooming, fine, you're still a pedophile. Are you happy now?
My therapist doesn't even think I groomed Enno. And the obvious rebuttals to that could be, well, we don't know what Cindy was saying to the therapist. What reason do I even have to lie at this point? I came into their office specifically saying I believed I groomed a child, and then after telling them all the details, they don't think that what I did was actually grooming.
If Synnibear is telling the truth here, then her therapist has to be amongst the worst on the entire planet. One good read of the logs that Enno posted, and you absolutely can come to the conclusion that Synnibear is a groomer. It is indisputable. But to address the obvious rebuttal that Synnibear wants to bring up, that's not what I would say. No, my rebuttal is that I don't care what your therapist thinks. I have the full picture as to what you've actually done in your DMs with minors. And I, an albeit autistic 29-year-old man, can plenty think for myself here. And in the court of public opinion, you're guilty. It's as simple as that.
Jack has decided to ride the wave of this controversy to accuse me of sexual assault. But I think anyone listening to what Jack said should be able to recognize that what actually happened is he retracted his consent long after what happened. Which is not only disheartening, but I believe constitutes slander.
Can I just point out, by the way, that we're only about 8.5 minutes into this video, and it's already veering into the direction of Birdie.
As someone who has been sexually abused in the past, as a child, the fact that he's so comfortable weaponizing our consensual touching not only makes me unholy levels of pissed off, but also makes me feel extremely heartbroken. Jack is someone I trusted and cared for and loved unconditionally for nearly a year, and he's willing to lie and deceive with clear intentions of ruining my life.
Okay, for full disclosure, I could not care less about Birdie and how it was affected by Synnibear's actions. I'm at least aware of Birdie's history surrounding the dice cult, how it abused its ferret, and the gross mischaracterization of its grandmother's actions. Especially when Birdie itself has been burning so many bridges for itself. That aside, Synnibear's comments about Birdie retracting its consent I find to be very interesting. Since fairly recently, in Synnibear's 2026 apology video, she already up and confessed to possible communication issues, which to me reads that Synni did not take Birdie seriously when it was telling her no. Which is not something you want to admit to and you've already gone on record saying that you fantasize about freaking rape. Just saying, it reads like a Freudian slip.
I have been labeled a child predator, I've been framed as a sexual deviant, described and implied to be a violent degenerate, and an aggressive rapist. Jack and I had lived together for about 9 months, and in that time we established a friendship with boundaries still being discovered. I deliberately asked Jack if the things I was doing were okay, and Jack said they were. I was not under the impression that Jack was not comfortable or even unhappy with these silly acts of poking and squishing. Had Jack communicated to me as such, I would have stopped and apologized profusely.
I personally have no problems with saying that Birdie is acting maliciously. However, and unfortunately for you, Synnibear, as bad as Birdie is, as long as it's at least right about you being a groomer to a 14-year-old, you can't really hope to bounce back from this.
Given the nature of our friendship and the level of intimacy we shared, I half-jokingly asked Jack to sit on my face while clothed, to which he politely declined and I respected their answer. This was out of morbid curiosity, and honestly, that shit was gay as fuck. I'm just a girl. Het guys have similar humors and dynamics to my understanding. I've seen what the homies get up to, and it's all in good fun to call them gay and tease about it, but being curious isn't indicative of someone's orientation and preference. TLDR, Jack has grossly misinterpreted our relationship in a manner that really fucking hurts, dude.
I will say, as horrible of a person that Birdie is, just because Birdie is bad does not automatically mean that Synni is good. And so trying to elicit sympathy from how you've been bullied doesn't really work. Two things can be true at the same time. Okay, it's not a zero-sum game. This is why trying to argue you're not as guilty as people are saying you are is a fool's errand. What you needed, and you desperately needed this if you wanted any chance of coming back, was to be able to prove that you're innocent. Like, entirely innocent. Anything short of that, then you're just done. End of story.
Jack's GoFundMe is a scam and it's slanderous. Jack's selling point on the GoFundMe that raised over $10,000 in like 3 days was that he didn't feel safe living with me anymore. As if I'm some sort of evil, deranged, violent rapist that was gonna groom Jack next for saying awful shit about me in the next room. Ironic, considering I was a fucking sobbing mess on the couch, laying in the fetal position, breaking down over the awful shit that he said to me.
I remember hearing about Birdie's GoFundMe. Apparently, even after being able to get that extra money so it could actually move away from Synnibear, it would still spend on stuff like DoorDash and My Little Pony merch. You think if you're that desperate, then your expenses for luxury should realistically be zero. But even if Birdie didn't blow its money on whatever it wanted, $10,000 seems like a very short-term solution considering you don't really have anywhere else to live. Keep in mind, it burned its bridges with its parents, so it couldn't really go to live with them anymore. And its grandmother offered to give Birdie a beach house to live in instead, but Birdie's been acting pretty dang cold to her as well. So realistically, that $10,000 would not last very long, especially in this economy. And when you account for stuff like rent, pet expenses, appliances, food and water, Birdie could not hope to last long at all while getting a job. And given the history that Birdie has, Honestly, I don't think I'd actually have gone through with exposing Synnibear. It sounds horrible, I know, but realistically, you had a lot to lose. And the short-term $10,000 could not possibly be sustainable. Definitely not considering how often Birdie itself gets into controversy.
Jack was not financially independent, but neither am I. I occasionally had to rely on Jack's social security to make ends meet and maintain our lifestyle and security. Jack made a little under $1,000 each month from his benefits. Jack was unemployed and hardly attempted to make any income through commissions. For the 9 months we stayed together, I would say that half of that time I was paying rent in full. We moved in November and Jack hadn't considered splitting rent until February. I had to beg Jack to pay only 1/3 of rent with their social security, and he tried to refuse. That would be a total of a little under $300 a month out of the money that was meant to go toward things like rent. I don't think Jack even understands what that money was granted to him for. For the final 2 to 3 months that Jack was staying here, Jack was no longer receiving social security due to him not attending a court hearing. Meaning Jack stayed in my apartment rent-free in the time that he had the audacity to pull this shit. I paid for the food. Jack being autistic requires some pricey and specialty items to be constantly in stock. So this was more than just feeding 2 people and 2 cats.
Jeez, no wonder this video failed to change the narrative as far as who's in the wrong. I'll be straight with you all watching this video. I'm bored to tears from this ramble from Synnibear. Like, the situation is being treated as if it's Synnibear versus Birdie, with Enno, the actual freaking victim, being largely an afterthought. If you're gonna ramble on about stupid crap, at least be just a robot and make it funny, even if you do end up screwing yourself over.
Jack's only bill, aside from the third of rent, was the internet, which checked out to be $45 a month. Jack's social security is what secured this apartment. Jack has asked their viewers, in light of grooming allegations of a 14-year-old, for their money to enable them to ditch their living situation and leave me to handle all the loss. Stealing one of the pets that I own and pay the medical bills for, that I fed and took care of. To make matters worse, Jack has tried to ruin my life in many different avenues. Jack has isolated me from my only real-life friends and socially engineered my coworkers against me. Jack has made a public spectacle about this and ruined my reputation, to the point that my family heard about it. My fucking brother heard about this situation at school. Jack has gone on Twitter and wished me more than death. I will go more in depth on that later, but he's publicly celebrating my downfall and interacting with people who make art depicting violent and cruel acts on me. And he and everyone else feels justified doing this shit because pedos are bad.
Obviously, Synnibear isn't really concerned with how her actions affected a minor, and is instead more focused about how she's affected. Which, if she was innocent, I'd understand. I think in that case, you'd have the right to be indignant. But so much of what she said before is actively trying to downplay the harm she inflicted upon Enno. And barring that, if you put the fact that Cindy is a woman aside, she comes off as downright sociopathic by trying to downplay how she affected Birdie as well. Which, for the record, is a horrible look if you're trying to appeal to the crowd who currently hates you. And another thing, as of making this video, her standing is horrific. She is the last person who should be saying anything to defend herself. Because people for good reason are going to be extremely uncharitable with what she has to say, especially when it's her own word against hard evidence. And that's to say nothing of the fact that people think that she's a pedophile. Who in their right mind would care how a pedophile feels? Much less for their privacy. So this whole sob story does absolutely nothing for anyone.
Speaking of, the fact that he feels so comfortable calling me a pedophile when he knows what I've been through and he knows how I respond to those topics is driving me up a fucking wall. He should know damn well that I'm not a pedo. He is way too flippant using this life-ruining word. It's disgusting.
Admittedly, I am not the most privy to Synnibear's history on the internet aside from watching some videos from creators like Tosify, so I can't claim to know what she's been through prior to now. But the idea that Synnibear is not a pedophile is quite frankly laughable. But who knows, maybe she did have a bad childhood. Maybe she was a victim of sexual grooming. I don't know, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. If it was that easy to shirk off responsibility for committing a crime, then Cain never would have been punished for killing Abel. Because he would then just be able to argue, I'm only acting on the sin that my parents passed on to me. Never mind the fact that Abel, despite also having sin within him, is entirely innocent of that. The circumstances surrounding your birth are irrelevant. It's what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.
I have learned in light of this situation that I have been surrounded by the most deluded and dishonest lunatics I've ever met. a group of people that are part of a wider issue, where you can say or do the most heinous acts to someone, so long as you call them a bad person beforehand. Whether they are or not seems to be debated after the fact.
There is something deliciously ironic about the fact that she is saying this while there's gameplay of Cult of the Lamb on screen. That being said, Cindy, if you want to be a heretic, maybe call out the fact that the cult you've been involved in for so many years is actively normalizing decent behavior for you. You could easily build a case around that. Especially since I'm fairly certain that Birdie is also guilty of grooming someone younger than it is. Does the name Draggy ring a bell? It would be significantly easier to accept than this retarded conspiracy where it sounds like you're advocating for pedophiles to be treated better than they are. Obviously, the age gap between Eno and Cindy is significantly worse, being 6, possibly even 7 whole years compared to Birdie's 3. But Cindy is also entirely aware that Birdie says it was groomed by Kitty Dog, someone who was only 2 years older than Birdie. And they were both minors, no older than 14 years old. Can you spell contradiction?
My confession was false, and the people who reacted thought twice and clearly wanted it to be true. They remarked that something didn't seem right, but didn't bother to question the legitimacy of the allegations and the confession. If I pulled the DM logs of Turkey Tom when he was 18 to 19, I have to wonder what I could find. If I did the same to Deadwing Dork, Chud Logic, Soph the Neko, I have to wonder. If we dug through every interaction you've ever had online, would there suddenly be more incentive to be nuanced and open-minded? Because those aren't even the things I asked for.
If you focus too much on how others act and not focusing on yourself, you're gonna drive yourself insane. Cultivate your own values and stick to those. Integrity is one of the very few things you have full control over. And this game of projection is simply not it, Chief.
I'm being represented in terribly bad faith, and I'd be surprised if anyone listed really believes they've never said or done anything that could be used against them in this manner. For those plugging their ears, I have to wonder how you would fare if you were the target.
Oh, I'm sure everyone has skeletons in their closet. We're all sinful. There's no shame in admitting that. But at least speaking personally, I can't think of a single instance in my entire life where I've spoken to a minor about anything remotely sexual. If anything, I find it off-putting to be discussed so openly on the internet. But hey, if you want to add more bodies to the furnace, be my guest. The more trash we get to burn, the better.
As long as we're all still here, I would like to talk about Jack's video that he made about me. He's the one who brought the situation to the public. He made a lot of points in his video, and I have a lot to say about them. I'm gonna be going more in depth on the things that Jack complained about in his video. I'd like to just get started. Jack's behavior throughout this situation has been really fucking strange, and I have to question what his motivation was, both in this situation and honestly in our friendship. I'm not sure why he felt like he needed $10,000 from a GoFundMe just to get away from me. That's a shit ton of money. Maybe it's for a fresh start, but it feels a bit exploitative. It feels strange to make a video educating people about someone you believe to be a predator and then ask for a shit ton of money that isn't even meant to help the victim. I feel like he could have asked for enough to buy a plane ticket and a few months of food. Even then, I'm thinking about how we spent 4 days in Seattle for vacation and Jack's family was exceptionally generous. His aunt let us sleep on her couch for those 4 days, and his grandparents each gave us hundreds of dollars just to shop in Seattle, as well as paying for our plane tickets to and from Seattle. But I heard the aunt suggesting Jack ask his papa for expensive gifts because he's likely to buy them for him. If Jack needed money, I feel like he could ask his grandparents for help. Plus, his aunt went to fucking law school. She could probably help him find affordable housing under the guise that Jack is too disabled to work. I feel like his family would be more than likely to help him since Jack keeps framing the situation as an emergency. He needs to get away from Synnibear03 right now!
Forgive my ignorance, but beyond the fact that Anna was being groomed by a pedophile, how does that correlate to a need for extra money for them? I agree that Birdie was acting maliciously, but the dots connecting to Eno, I'm not really seeing. Obviously, I'm not against Eno receiving any kind of extra money in case they actually need it, but for Birdie, at least at the time, it made sense. It thought it was at risk being around Synnibear and it wanted to leave. But Eno, neurological state notwithstanding, isn't in any physical danger. So at least to me, this statement about the victim not receiving any financial compensation rings extremely hollow.
I've also seen plenty of people questioning the use of the panty and stocking designs on his GoFundMe page. I actually asked him that too, because he showed me the page when he made it. I asked why he was using a picture of the two of us, and his explanation was that he just threw it all together. I didn't push any further. I saw a lot of people also pointing out that it was weird to include the panty and stocking animation. I kind of agree. It's strange that in the video where you're warning everyone about Synnibear03, the predator, the freak,
I'm not a freak, unlike Cinny.
you include an animation of me dancing on a stripper pole and taking off my panties.
I forget who, it might be Harley TBS amongst other content creators, but I think Birdie actually removed the animation from its video after being called out for having it there. Nonetheless, it does not surprise me at all that Birdie is the kind of person to project its eccentricities onto others. Honestly, I'd be more surprised to find someone who doesn't project their being eccentric onto others. Self-awareness is a dying art form.
Jack claims I sexually assaulted him, which is just not fucking true. In his video, he shows a screenshot of me losing my mind over the fact that he was saying I assaulted him. This, plus the fact that Jack admits to consenting to me touching him, should have tipped y'all off that he was talking out of his ass.
Touching back on, Cindy's, sexual assault towards me, I'd like to preface this by saying this is gonna get kinda graphic, so I'm sorry. On a daily basis, she, makes comments about my ass, how big and squishy it is, and how she wants a boyfriend with an ass like mine, and she would constantly slap it and grab it. And I'm gonna be honest, I consented to this because I've never had an IRL friend before, and I didn't know what kind of touching was and wasn't okay. And, I also consented to her, touching my boobs. And, I guess, this stuff is fine because I consented to it, but there's stuff that she did that I didn't consent to. She would often poke me, in the ass or, on my crotch and, make jokes about fingering me. And, I told her not to do this, and I said no multiple times, and I would even, scream when she did it. But she did it even as recently as, a few nights ago, I think.
I need a vacation, man. Okay, in Synnibear's defense, the idea of Birdie never learning where its special areas are is complete bullshit. This is stuff you're taught as early as freaking middle school. Heck, grade schoolers learn this stuff from Sonic the Hedgehog. What do you mean you don't know what kind of touching is okay? Unrelated, but does Birdie not know that baka is just how you say stupid in Japanese? The sign reading as "fuck my stupid baka life" is effectively saying "fuck my stupid life." It's like saying chai tea.
I still have my doubts about, my feelings about this because, with that thing, I didn't continue to say no, and I confronted Cinny about this, and she said she thought I was joking when I said no, which I have a recording of, but I'll show the recording later.
Yes, I did make a lot of comments about Jack's ass and how big and squishy it is. I've smacked him on the ass, I've grabbed his ass, I've even used his ass as a pillow. I've played with his breasts, and I've always asked if what I was doing bothered him or made him uncomfortable, and he's always said he doesn't mind. He doesn't care. It's fine. He says he didn't consent to me poking him in the ass or in the crotch, which I have to say, I don't know if he ever made it explicitly clear that he didn't like me poking him in the ass, and I do genuinely feel bad if I was making him uncomfortable by doing that. I say in the recording he took of me, by the way, I had no fucking idea I was being recorded, I tell him I thought he was joking when he told me no. There's a lot of things that I do to Jack expecting a specific reaction because he makes funny noises. I would often grab his face and squish it in my hand and he'd make a murr sound, and I thought it was funny. I would hold his nose closed, and when I let go he would inhale really hard. Funny. I'd pinch his double chin and he'd say, "My gizzard." Funny. When I poked him in the ass, he would scream. Not a guttural scream, like it would be easy for me to assume that he was scared or upset. It was like a silly scream like, "Ah! Ah!"
Would it be right to call Birdie Synnibear's boy toy? Because that's what it sounds like right now. Also, their dynamic is starting to sound something like this.
Beano, go away!
Just calling it like I see it.
Last time I remember doing this though, he didn't react at all. He was playing with Squirp on the cat tree and I poked him in the ass and he didn't react. He just kept playing with the cat. He didn't even flinch. How am I supposed to know that you don't like what I'm doing if you don't tell me? If you told me before, then it wasn't really clear.
Here's a better question. Why would you assume that Birdie giving you consent once means that it's giving you consent throughout the entire time you're together? Like if you had a boyfriend, you wouldn't just think you can kiss him whenever you wanted. That would be veering headlong into sexual assault territory. And if these instances are unprompted as you're implying, then it comes off as if Birdie is telling the truth. After all, it ain't like your husband and wife. Or even boyfriend and girlfriend for that matter. If you were, then it would be fine, because at that point it would just be flirting. You know, provided you and your spouse already had that understanding with each other. You two were just roommates though. So no matter how you slice it, this is grossly inappropriate. But more to your point, if Birdie is not responding to your usual touching, it's probably not in the mood. At the bare minimum, you should be asking if it's okay. Which from what I can tell, you didn't.
You gotta be explicit with me. I'm autistic. I'm stupid.
I hate when people do this, trying to use autism as an excuse for being inept and apparently incapable of asking others how they may feel about something. Like, if this was true, then she wouldn't be so concerned about Anno not responding immediately if ever she was preoccupied with anything. So why is your autism relevant here, but not there, with the 14-year-old? I'm smelling something foul.
He says I poked him in the crotch, and I have 2 memories of doing this, and both times I immediately apologized afterwards. I poked him in the gents on accident because I was trying to poke him in the ass and I went too low, and he told me, "You poked me in the veg."
What? What am I listening to?
And I apologized profusely and stressed that I didn't mean to. I poked him in the pubic area once and then immediately asked if it was okay to do that, and to be frank, I don't actually have a clear memory of his response. I don't know why. This isn't something I do regularly. That's why I had to question if I actually did that in the recording.
Oh, so not a possibility has been raised that Birdie has tried to communicate that it doesn't feel comfortable with the touching, and you just brushed it off. That's a great sign.
She would often poke me, like, in the ass or, like, on my crotch and, like, make jokes about fingering me and, like...
Sometimes when I poked him in the ass, I would say, "Star finger," because I thought it was funny. He brings up the fact that I asked him to sit on my face. I do understand if he's upset that I would ask him to do this. It's a sexual situation in nature, and he declined for that reason. If Jack doesn't like that I was willing to ask him to do that, he has every right to be upset.
Riddle me this, why can't you people just be normal?
What he doesn't have the right to do is revoke his consent of me touching him and claiming I sexually assaulted him just because he doesn't like me anymore. That's pussy shit.
And I'm gonna be honest, I consented to this because I've never had an IRL friend before and I didn't know what kind of touching was and wasn't okay.
My brother in Christ, you are an adult. You choose what touching is okay. There is no rule book.
Fun fact, because of Birdie's identity, I believe it is actually impossible for it to be a brother in Christ. That is to say, I distinctly remember hearing Birdie actively call itself a devilkin and call itself Lucifer.
Jack admits in his video to not looking over the evidence, which just irks me, dude. Your best friend is being accused of a bunch of shit, and you can't be bothered to look over any of it, or even fucking get someone else to look over it for you. The original addressing Synnibear03 document is a fucking joke. I'll get to it when I get to it. But the information he got from me directly about the doc was me ranting about some of the dumbass points I saw while I skimmed through it while I was at work. There are some things that are definitely worth criticizing me for, and I'll get to those, but most of it was so unbelievably stupid. If you started to doubt me, why not have someone else relay the information to you at least? Like, what about Laurel? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I should be responsible for relaying this information to you, especially when I was at fucking work when this was happening. You gotta find this shit out on your own.
If there are legitimate things to criticize you for, then you probably should really only focus on those. Barring that, I believe that Synnibear is talking about the document that's 111 pages long, and whoever made that document desperately needs to learn how to edit it down to make it more digestible for people to actually read. Because not everyone is going to have the time or the patience to sit through a document that's that long.
No, I have not been mooching off of Synny. I have actually, like... I've helped pay rent every month. I've helped pay for groceries. I've given Synny money for gas. I've paid for a lot of her things. Like, I have not been mooching off of her, but...
I was not mooching off of Synny is a wild statement considering how much I was doing for you. We were living together for almost half a year, and I would say half that time you were staying in my apartment rent-free. The first few months we lived together, I was paying the rent in full, and I had to fucking plead with you to pay 1/3 of the rent. Not half rent, I offered Jack pay 1/3 of the rent because his benefits paid him half of what I get paid. I had to fucking drag it out of you, and you whined about it. You haven't paid rent for the past few months because your benefits were revoked. I cook, I clean the apartment, I do the dishes, I do the laundry. You sometimes clean the litter boxes when I ask you to. I drive you to your appointments. I pay for your medicine. I take you on car rides when you're sad. I buy you ice cream every week. I have to fucking bribe you with ice cream so you'll get out of bed and go to Social Security to try to get your benefits back.
Why can't these two just behave like adults and keep this stuff confidential where it belongs? This realistically should not be anyone else's business. And as an outsider looking in, it looks like a breakup. God, I'm embarrassed for you.
I was taking care of you, and it's fucking wild that you have the audacity to paint me as a monster and call me a pedophile when you should know that isn't fucking true. I've always been by your side, as long as you were willing to get better. I stood by your side when the internet still hated you and thought you were a groomer. I stood by you when you drew over the Borderline 12 shooting memorial. I am heartbroken that you threw away our friendship as soon as it wasn't easy being my friend, when I have done everything for you. You are a fucking coward. Not only would I call you a moocher, you're also a thief. You stole my jewelry, the fake nails that our mutual bought for me, and you took our fucking cat when you don't have stable housing. I genuinely believe you should bring Squirt back to my apartment because you cannot take care of her on your own. You can't even take care of yourself. This isn't me being malicious and trying to take your cat from you because I'm upset with you. I don't think you can take care of her. And if you try to make the argument that I forgot to feed her a couple times when I left for work, I knew that they would be okay if I didn't feed them as soon as I got up because you were always home. I have to work all day while you sit on your ass at home and draw. You also begged me to get these cats. You should be willing to contribute to taking care of them by feeding them and cleaning up after them. Especially when you're always home.
Birdie being dead weight aside, I have to wonder how Cindy did not see the writing on the wall that Birdie just has absolutely no drive to take care of itself. Ignoring that, this reads very strongly of being a guilt trip, with Cindy lording over Birdie's head just how much she does for it. Whether or not she means for it to come off that way, it comes off as manipulative to me.
Jack brings up my obsession with Boy. Let's talk about Boy. Something that keeps getting brought up is the fact that I'm simping over a minor's character. Okay, who fucking cares? The character is an adult, that is what matters. Sock is uncomfortable with how I'm using Boy. They blocked me, I don't care. I think I've made it very clear in the leaked DMs that I think Sock is way too sensitive when it comes to their characters. I think it's insanely stupid to post your characters online and then get upset when people get invested in your work. Not allowing people to ship your characters, ship themselves with your characters, make headcanons for your characters, kin your characters when you're posting them to the internet where everyone can see them is fucking ridiculous. Just try and control the internet. You will fail. I am tired of acting like she has any say over my creative freedom and self-expression. She blocked me so she doesn't have to see my art. That should be good enough for her. The only people hurting her are the ones who go out of their way to show her the things that I've drawn. Watch me continue to have beef with Sock.clip.
If I'm understanding this correctly, Sock.clip is a minor. Their character was being put in not safe for work situations, and against her wishes, Synnibear continues doing what she was already asked not to do anymore. I really don't get this controversy. This feels like such a nothing thing to include. It's like watching ants. Actually, no, it's less than that. Ants at least serve a purpose in nature as being decomposers. This is more like bacteria.
Before I get into my biggest concern, here's some smaller critiques that Jack had about me. He had an issue with me talking about sex AIs in my 13+ server. This is actually something I believe was a problem. I shouldn't have talked about it in my server. That was irresponsible and cringe. And you know what? Someone did actually DM me saying that I shouldn't have been doing that, and I agreed with them and didn't do it again. I believe I contemplated making like a public apology within the server, but my mods told me not to. I don't have any evidence of this because the server was deleted and I didn't know how to export the files. So take what I say with a poke in the ass. Boop.
You're talking about sex AIs and Why? For that matter, why clarify that a Discord server is 13+? Isn't 13 the minimum age requirement to be in Discord anyway? For that matter, why do you feel the need to talk about that with anyone else at all? Actually, no. If you were to talk about stuff like that with someone that you trust, like a single or maybe like a dedicated group of people that you know for a fact are of age and share that interest, then that would be one thing. But why publicly and out in the open? How does that even happen? What is wrong with you? Irresponsible and that is vile. How do you function in the real world when you act like that?
Jack says it would have been better if my server was 16+, and I will be honest, I don't know about that. You'd prefer if I was talking to 16-year-olds about which bots I can fuck? See, Jack is under the impression that 16+ is an appropriate label for sexual content, and I was under that impression too for the longest time. I think it's because the animation art community often use 16+ on sexual or suggestive content, and that's the community we grew up with.
In that case, total ACC death. And more to the point, I had no problem calling Birdie a pedophile too.
Realistically, it's still weird. Why even take a chance with the age stuff, honestly? If I ever make another Discord server, it is going to be 18+ with precautions to prove your age. This shit is annoying.
Here's a better idea. Just don't have these types of discussions at all. Then you'd be completely safe. About the best precaution you could take is abstinence. Like, I have a Discord server that's 18 plus, but that's because I hate being bothered by minors over the internet. Most of what I do otherwise is talk about cooking.
Jack was upset that I was sexting an AI bot while he was laying on top of me. I wasn't, like, touching myself or anything, but to be honest, I can see why this would upset him. I'm not gonna act like Jack was being irrational by getting upset that I was sexting an AI bot when he's trying to spend time with me. I do find it weird that he's upset that I would hide my DMs from him. He pushed to see my DMs at some points and I didn't want to show it to him. He admits that he knows I talk sexually with a lot of my friends, so I don't know why he didn't just drop it. Especially when he's hidden his DMs from me when he was talking to his partner or even to Laurel. It's a strange thing to complain about.
I don't feel safe here anymore after learning what happened.
I completely understand if my actions have made Jack trust me less, and he doesn't want to support me. I'm annoyed because I did that for him, but I'm not entitled to his presence in my life. I think it's odd that Jack insists that he's in danger to some extent by staying with me. Do you think I'm gonna get you? Do you think I'm gonna hurt you? Genuinely, how are you in danger by staying with me? I've established how what I did wasn't sexual assault. You don't get to revoke your consent.
Cindy's just looping right now. Don't mind me, I'm just enjoying the Cult of the Lamb gameplay in the background.
It really feels like he's making the situation about himself. Literally nothing he's done has been in the interest of protecting Enno. And a lot of his behavior has actually put Enno in danger. Not only does he and Sophia not censor Enno's name in their videos like I was trying to do in mine, Jack included Enno in a section in his video, and he leaves in her Discord tag so any random motherfucker can contact them. Anyone! If that's not bad enough, the document that shares our DMs, the one that Jack made Enno make for his video to come out, it doesn't just expose my kinks and fetishes, you're exposing that Enno likes this shit too, because Enno can be seen responding positively to a lot of this.
I really don't want to be the bad guy here in saying this, but let's be real here. Enno had absolutely no business having these types of conversations either, but I don't blame them for being caught up in it. They desperately need to be surrounded by better people in their life. Had better care been paid to how they presented themselves on the internet, a lot of this would have been avoidable. Here's a story for you all. Back in the day when I was a minor, or failing that a young adult, I was really into Mario Kart Wii, and I had recently discovered what YouTube was. And one person I was talking to on the internet goes by the name Fornication Fun. I don't recall anything explicit ever being discussed between us both. Yes, we both would pretty casually throw around some vulgar language, me mainly being curse words, and he would say stuff like rape casually. But that was in response to being hacked in the game, more so than any kind of actual intercourse. And you know, me being a young impressionable boy, I would just use curse words because I thought it would be cool, not because I actually felt like cursing like a sailor. Long story short, my dad found out I was talking to them, and having my best interests at heart, he communicated with me that he was not comfortable with me talking with someone who had that name on the internet. From there, I broke it off with them, and our conversations ended amicably. Now, even though I personally don't think anything would have come about with my conversations with Fornication Fun, I think my dad was right to do what he did, because grooming can be a very slippery slope, and there's no telling how I would turn out if my parents weren't so attentive to me. Especially since back in the day, YouTube actually had a direct messaging option, and so this stuff could absolutely have been done in secret. I can't speak for others and their parents, but I cannot imagine that parents are nearly as bad over the internet as a lot of minors make them out to be. Because if your own parents can't be trusted to look for your best interest, then realistically, who else will? That being said, I have to agree with Synnibear that Birdie was being extremely negligent broadcasting Enno's information for the whole world to see, since it shoots a pretty big hole in the idea that Enno needs to remain anonymous. But at this stage in the game, what else can you really do?
People can use this information to prey on Enno. Enno would have been kept safer if this entire situation was handled privately. Jack. Not only that, but Jack has caused people to attempt to contact Enno's parents, which freaked them the fuck out. None of this is being handled responsibly. Nothing he's doing is helping the supposed victim. I don't think he even really cares, if I'm being completely honest. The way Jack has been treating me makes no sense to me, and I want to talk about it. He was insisting that this needed to be public, and he needed to have the first word. I made my apology video faster than he did, and he begged me to wait until his was done uploading, because according to him, people would attack him because they'd automatically assume he's on my side.
I reckon that it's no deeper than Birdie, the Devilkin, is a snake. You cannot convince me that Birdie did this out of the goodness of its heart. But hey, nothing of value was lost.
So I waited for him to finish the video before I could upload mine. I was extremely emotional at this point in time. I was crying all day and I felt so sick that I had to take the day off work. I overheard him recording for his video and I heard some of the things he said, and I went into a blind rage. That's when I sent him this text. I was furious. And yet later on, I went back to apologize because Eno told me I shouldn't send stuff like that to Jack because it was only driving him further away. I assume he was in a GC with Soph and Eno, and he must have sent them the text that I sent. Later that night, I came into his room and tried to reason with him and get him to stay with me, but he wasn't having it. I told him that I would do anything if he would stay, whether that be giving him my passwords or letting him look over my DMs with Eno, but he didn't want anything from me. I would have given anything to prove that I was willing to get better for him, and he made it clear that he needed to leave. I asked how long it would be until he left, and he didn't. I asked if I could just be with him and cuddle with him because I couldn't stand being alone. He said yes. I laid next to him and I held him, sobbing while he worked on the animation loop for his video. I watched him draw it. I remember asking why he was putting so much effort into an animation loop for a video that he insisted needed to be out as quickly as possible. I don't remember what his response was. That night, I took him to get Panera, and the whole time, he was acting so normal. It was like nothing was wrong. I remember while we were waiting for our food, I broke down crying again, and Jack told me, "If it bothers you that I'm acting normal, I'm just really good at masking." He got a bread bowl, I got food too, but my stomach was in knots and I couldn't eat anything. We watched Rick and Morty while we ate, and I remember asking if we could try finishing Rick and Morty before he left, and he said that sounded like a good idea. I laid in bed with him, and he showed me funny videos, but I just kept crying. I remember very vividly how Jack was just pissing himself laughing, watching this guy eat a salad. Meanwhile, I was laying on top of him and sobbing. I asked if I could spend the night with him, and he said he wasn't sure if he could. But maybe tomorrow. I was upset, but I knew he needed space from me. I slept on the couch, I went to work, and when I came back, he was gone. He packed his shit and he left.
I feel like I'm listening to an ASMR of a fanfiction right now. Barring that, I cannot help but think it's just really funny hearing that Birdie was going out to lunch with a groomer. Just the tonal dissonance in Synnibear recounting her last moments with Birdie is so funny to me.
I was so scared because I didn't know where he could have gone. I didn't know if he was safe or if he was on the street. I thought I had more time with him. I didn't even get a chance to say goodbye or hug him one last time. I was heartbroken, and I was scared for his safety. He wouldn't answer my phone, and Laurel had blocked me. My IRL friends didn't know where he was, and so I had to call Eno. Eno stayed on the phone with me to keep me company that night, and they apologized profusely because Eno felt like it was their fault, and it wasn't.
Some food for thought. The victim blaming themselves for how everything is turning out for their abuser is exceptionally common for victims of this type of abuse. It's a classic case of Stockholm Syndrome, and it's really sad to think that Eno to this day feels this way for Synnibear.
Through Eno, I was able to confirm that Jack wasn't safe, but he was alive, and he didn't plan on coming back. I relayed to him that if he needed anything, I would be there for him. If he was in danger, I would help him. It may sound upsetting that I had to call Eno of all people, but I had no one else to talk to. I had nowhere else to go.
So was this before coming into contact with Kumo? I'm guessing it was, because otherwise why not talk to him? Regardless, admitting that you're still in contact with Eno was a freaking horrible look. You need to keep as far away from her as possible. Nothing good could come about from trying to have any more conversations with Eno. Barring that, I mean, the suicide hotline is also a thing you could probably try going to. Though at the end of the day, you're a pedophile. I don't really know why I would care.
The next morning, I woke up to really loud knocking on my door. The police showed up to my apartment to check on me. It was a wellness check. They said my real-life friend called them, but later I asked that friend and she didn't know what I was talking about. I saw Jack tried to call me multiple times and I texted him back saying I'm sorry and I was asleep. And also the police came by, and he said, "We thought you died, lol." He didn't say anything after that. That was the last time he ever messaged me. I thought this was a good sign, honestly. I thought this meant that even though he was upset with me, he still cared enough to make sure I'm alive. He cared enough to call the police for a wellness check. I went to work that day, and late into my shift, I saw that he made a Twitter thread. He openly bragged about stealing my friends from me, and he told me to live and suffer, and he called me a pedophile. And he took a picture of the hat he left on my pillow before he left.
What? I probably shouldn't be laughing at that, but where do you even find a hat with a word like that on it? Being serious, though, making it out as if it's a game that your friend is being exposed for being a groomer and a pedophile, that's some crazy work. It feels like Birdie is out taking this situation with nearly the respect it deserves.
The idea that he still cared about me was snuffed out almost instantly. I didn't know what to think of him anymore. I didn't know what he was capable of. I didn't know what he was willing to do. So I went into a delusional, paranoid state. I had to leave work early, but I couldn't go home. I was convinced that if I went home, then someone would be at my apartment and they would kill me. I thought Jack sent someone to my apartment and they would kill me as soon as I opened the door. I bought 3 things. I got pepper spray, a pocket knife, and a crowbar to protect myself because I was scared for my life. That real life friend I mentioned earlier, I called them and I told them I couldn't go home. I asked if I could stay at their place for the night and they said I couldn't. I feel bad because I screamed at them over the phone when they tried to assure me that I wasn't actually in danger. They were just trying to help me out of my delusion and I screamed at them for it. We set up a plan where I parked in a different town. They drove to me and they took my spare key. And then they went to my apartment to check all the rooms, and they told me it was safe to come. They left before I came home, and when I came, I held my pepper spray in my hand and I checked all the rooms myself. And when I saw my cat, I just started crying. Stupid doesn't understand what's going on. I don't feel safe in my own home anymore.
You named your cat Stupid? Actually, wait, isn't Stupid the name of Baby? I don't imagine that Cindy got a 3rd cat.
I'm feeling better ever since this happened, but fuck, man. I keep seeing the things that Jack posts on Twitter and it just makes me feel sick. It makes me angry. The fact that I thought he cared about me. I thought he loved me. And he says this awful shit publicly. Fucking victory lapping around me. Encouraging people to make hateful art about me. Talking about stealing my intellectual properties for himself to use. Knowing that I can't say anything about it. Because the internet fucking hates me. Trying to silence me once he found out that I was making my video.
There's some serious tonal whiplash with the fact that Synnibear was talking about getting weapons to protect herself, and then later on in the video talking about how she was getting hateful art drawn of her. I will draw myself as the Chad, and you as the Soy being given a wedgie in the bathroom. God, this is ridiculous.
I can't help but think that he wanted me to kill myself. I love him so much, but I can't help but feel like I was used. I did everything for him. I loved him, and I thought he loved me. And I feel like he wanted me to kill myself. He's taken everything from me, and he's laughing at me. He's mocking me when I thought he loved me. I don't know where he is right now. I don't know if he's safe. I don't know what's happening to him. He said he was going to make a second video talking about me, but he had to stop because of something dangerous happening, and I don't know what he was referring to. I fucking feel sick because I still care about him. I genuinely hope he is safe. I still love him. Even after seeing all this, I still love him. I don't know why he's acting like this. I know he has borderline personality disorder, so I really hope that this is just him splitting on me, and maybe later down the line he'll come to his senses and realize that I'm not the monster he's saying I am. That could just be hopeful thinking, but I do know that borderline personality disorder causes you to think in black and white. He thought I was the most amazing person ever, and now he thinks I'm the worst. I hope it changes. I want my friend back.
Are you crying? In your position? You know, if this is your way of trying to look vulnerable to your audience, there are other ways you could go around trying to do that without resorting to sobbing on the internet. All this is going to do is make you look manipulative. Especially since, bear in mind, she is a pedophile. You getting hugs and sympathy points is not going to happen because at the end of the day, whether or not you're capable of remembering it, you are a pedophile. And the internet at large does not care how Birdie has been treating you. The concern over the cat was one thing, because their feelings for you aside, no one worth their salt is going to brush aside the safety of an innocent cat. But Birdie using your fall from grace as an excuse to bully you? That's honestly whatever, you're scum. Granted, it's rich coming from Birdie considering what it's guilty of, but again, it's not a zero-sum game. You both can suffer.
I think it'd be ridiculous to come out of this situation still thinking it'd be a good idea to put myself in spaces that are mostly occupied by children. I can see that I have a huge issue filtering myself in these spaces, and I have theories as to why that is. I grew up in a community where adults and children made sexual content that was mostly consumed by children. I've always had friends who I was sexual with ever since I was in elementary school. So I've gotten used to having relationships where I share intimate details with them. I've talked sexually with my fans when I myself was a minor still, and I think my brain never recognized that as an issue, nor did I recognize that my collective audience wasn't growing up at the same rate as I was. When I was a child, my audience was around my age. Now I'm 21 and my audience has grown too, but it's still mostly children. And I think I have trouble comprehending that when I speak in public spaces.
That, to be fair, is a distinct possibility. The perverse nature of the community that she grew up in, coupled with her own mental hang-up over her autonomy, I can see how that would have halted her development. And if not that, it at least blurred the line of what would be acceptable for an adult and a child to discuss. Unfortunately, just because you were wronged in your past does not mean you deserve a free pass for passing the torch and corrupting someone else. Especially when you are full-on aware that what you were doing was wrong. And if ever Anno later down in life ends up doing the same thing that you do, Synnibear, knowing her story prior with how much it was publicized would not protect her. Everyone, no matter who they are, deserves a chance to live their best life. And that's especially true for children.
These reasons and theories do not excuse what I've done. I think the best solution would just be to put myself in spaces with other adults and not let this become a problem again. I gotta stop talking to people under 18, whether I think they're funny and fun to talk to or not. I'm still going to at least take a break from my social media. I don't think it'd be good for me to immediately come back. It doesn't feel right. I don't expect my video to change everyone's mind and make people think I'm a good person. I don't even think I'm a good person. But I'm not a predator. And to be as clear as humanly possible, all these changes that I'm making are for me. Not for Jack. Not for you. I want to make an effort to be better, but I don't owe you shit. My name is Synnibear03's. Baka baka.
Here's a better idea. Get off of the internet. It isn't like Anna was your first or even second victim after all. Realistically, you cannot be trusted. And the fact that as of 2026, that still has not seeped into your mind yet is alarming. That aside, wow, this video was painful to get through. I feel like I've genuinely become dumber as a result of watching it. But like I said before, Synnibear's story has always been very interesting to me. Well, I'm not really sure what I'll look at next, because I don't think there's really anything else significant regarding Synnibear that I'm interested in. It may be about time to look into Just a Robot at long last. So if you want to hear my retrospective look at that video he made trying to defend Synnibear03 from grooming allegations, that'll probably be what I talk about next. Till then, this is Phantom C, and thank you for watching.